All right, Cowboys Nation, listen to me very carefully because what I'm about to break down for you today changes the entire way we should be thinking about this draft, and honestly, if you're not paying attention to what Brian Schottenheimer just said on the Pro Day circuit, then you are missing the biggest clues Dallas has given us all offseason. And real quick before we dive into this, if you're a Cowboys fan and you're not subscribed yet, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now because this channel breaks down every single Cowboys update the second it drops, and we're growing this community fast. So don't get left behind. Now let me get into this because Schottenheimer just went on record during the Texas Pro Day, and the things that came out of his mouth are absolutely loaded with meaning. And the crazy part is most people are only catching the surface level stuff, but if you really listen to how he framed his answers and where his eyes went when he said certain things, you start to realize this man has a plan that might catch the entire NFL off guard. So let's start with what he said about the evaluation process, because this is actually really important for understanding how Dallas is approaching this entire draft class. Schottenheimer talked about how when they go to these pro days, the film is already done. They've already watched these guys play 1,000 times over. What they're really looking for at this stage is the human being behind the helmet. And he specifically mentioned taking prospects out to dinner, getting them away from the facility, seeing how they act when the cameras aren't rolling and when the coaches aren't standing there with clipboards. And that might sound like just standard coach speak, but here's why it matters. The Cowboys have reportedly been scheduling private dinners with multiple prospects at several different schools, and when a team starts doing that, at this volume, it tells you they're not just kicking tires. They're doing deep evaluation on guys. They're genuinely considering drafting, and the fact that Schottenheimer emphasized wanting to see how a player's teammates gravitate toward him in those casual settings that tells you character and leadership are at the very top of this regime's checklist, which makes perfect sense when you think about the culture overhaul that's been happening in Dallas this offseason. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part nobody is talking about enough when Schottenheimer was asked about his involvement in the draft process this year. Compared to last year, he made it very clear that year 2 is a completely different animal for him. Last year, he admitted he was more surface level watching highlight reels and trusting the scouting department to do the heavy lifting, but this year, he said he's gone through game film on prospects position by position. He knows these players intimately and he feels much more prepared to help make selections. And why does that matter? Because when your head coach is that dialed into the draft board, it means the picks are going to reflect his vision for this team. Not just the scouting department's rankings, and that's a subtle but massive shift in how Dallas is going to operate on draft night. Now, here's the moment that made me rewind 3 times, and I'm not even exaggerating when Schottenheimer was talking about the draft philosophy. He said the words that I think define everything the Cowboys are about to do. He said, "We want to draft natural and draft pure." And then he followed it up by saying, when you reach for a player, that's when you make mistakes now. On the surface, that sounds like best player available, right? Just take whoever's the highest rated guy on your board when your pick comes up. But I think it's deeper than that. Because of what he said, right before that statement he said, they want to be prepared to do what they need to do on defense, but they're certainly not going to pass on a great offensive player if one is sitting there at their pick. And here's the kicker. According to multiple people who were watching this interview closely, Schottenheimer made direct eye contact with the camera at that exact moment. The only time during the entire interview where he locked eyes with the lens and looked like he was speaking directly to Cowboys fans. And listen, maybe that's nothing. Maybe that's just a coincidence. But to me, that felt intentional. That felt like a man who knows something the public doesn't. And he wanted to send a little signal without saying too much. And when you combine that with the other things we've been learning about the Cowboys' pro day activities, it starts to paint a very clear picture. Dallas is hunting for an offensive weapon. Now I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing at first. You're thinking, wait a minute, the Cowboys just brought in Javonte Williams at running back, they've got CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert and George Pickens at receiver, the offense should be pretty much set right. And on the surface, yeah, it looks that way. But the Cowboys have been doing something behind the scenes that tells a completely different story. They've been scheduling private dinners and meetings with skill position players at a rate that you don't see from a team that thinks their offense is complete. And let me walk you through some of the names that have popped up, because this is where it gets fascinating. First up, Jordan Hudson, a receiver formerly at SMU who clocked a 4.48 40-yard dash at his pro day workout and racked up 21 touchdown catches over his college career. The Cowboys reportedly had dinner scheduled with him. And when you're breaking bread with a guy at this stage of the process, that's not casual interest, that's real evaluation. Then you've got Romulo Brinson, another SMU receiver, who also had a private dinner set up with Dallas officials and reportedly met with several key members of the coaching staff. So that's 2 receivers right there that the Cowboys are seriously looking at, and the fact that these aren't just combine interactions or quick handshakes at a pro day, but actual sit-down dinners tells you the interest is legitimate, because here's the thing about these private meetings: teams don't waste their time doing this as a smokescreen, especially a team like Dallas that, according to reports, has been trying to keep their 30-visit information more under wraps this year compared to last season when Schottenheimer was the new head coach. They only had about 19 of their 30 visits leaked to the public, and it sounds like this year they're being even more secretive about it. So the fact that we're hearing about these dinners means there's probably a whole lot more happening that we don't even know about yet. But the position that I think is the most fascinating target for the Cowboys, and this is going to surprise some of you, is tight end. Yes, tight end, and let me tell you why, because the Cowboys have reportedly taken a very keen interest in Baylor tight end Michael Trigg, and when you look at this kid's profile, it's almost like he was designed in a lab for what Dak Prescott needs. This guy had 50 receptions last year, 694 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, averaged nearly 14 yards per catch, stands 6'4", 240 pounds, and has what people are calling go-go gadget arms because his wingspan is absolutely ridiculous. He's a legitimate receiving threat at the tight end position. Someone who can stretch the field, create mismatches, and give Dak a reliable target in the intermediate and deep parts of the field. And now, I want to be very honest with you because I think Jake Ferguson is a good football player. I like his personality, I like his toughness, I like the way he competes, but, and I say this with all due respect, there are moments on the field where his athletic limitations become a real problem for the offense. There were specific plays last season where Ferguson was targeted, and the ball just went absolutely nowhere because he couldn't separate quickly enough, or he was too slow off the line of scrimmage to get into his route on time, and there was at least one instance where a touchdown was left on the table because Ferguson simply couldn't get where he needed to be fast enough. And when you're building an offense around a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who thrives when he has athletes around him that can create separation and win contested catch situations, you need more than what Ferguson can give you as your primary pass-catching tight end. And that's not me saying replace him. That's me saying complement him properly. And that's exactly what a guy like Michael Trigg would do, because think about what that tight end room could look like. You've got Ferguson as your dependable possession guy who knows the offense inside and out. You've got Brevin Spanford as your big physical blocking tight end who can move people at the point of attack, and then you bring in a Michael Trigg type who's your dynamic receiving threat with elite length and the ability to win down the field, and suddenly you've got a 3-headed monster at tight end that can give defensive coordinators nightmares because they can't just key on one guy. The matchup problems multiply every time you go to a different personnel grouping. And I think this is something the Cowboys identified as a need going back to last season, because if you remember, they signed Rivaldo Fairweather, the Auburn tight end, as an undrafted free agent, and he was also more of a receiving threat type. So the pattern is clear. Dallas knows they need more juice at that position, and this draft might be where they finally go. Get it. And here's the part that's going to make some of you a little nervous. I think Luke Schoonmaker might be the odd man out if Dallas drafts a tight end. Because when you look at the room and you think about who brings the least to the table in terms of what this new offense wants to do, Schoonmaker is probably the most vulnerable. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if he becomes a trade piece during the offseason or ends up getting released during training camp if the Cowboys bring in a more dynamic option through the draft. Right now, Trigg is being projected as a late-day 2 pick, which would put him right in range for that 3rd-round selection the Cowboys hold. So the value lines up, the fit lines up, and the interest is clearly there now. In addition to receivers and tight ends, the Cowboys were also in attendance to scout Wake Forest running back DeAndre Claiborne. And this is interesting because even though they just signed Javonte Williams, it seems like Dallas isn't fully satisfied with the depth behind him. You've got Jaden Blue and Malik Davis and some other names, but I'm not sure the Cowboys are completely sold on any of those guys as a legitimate complementary piece, and honestly, I'm not sure they're 100% bought in on Jaden Blue either. So bringing in competition at that position makes a lot of sense, and it tells you that nobody's job is safe in this building, which is exactly the kind of mentality you want from a coaching staff that's trying to change the culture. So when you step back and look at the full picture, the Cowboys are looking at receivers, they're looking at tight ends, they're looking at running backs. They are clearly in the market for another offensive weapon, and that ties directly back to what Schottenheimer said when he looked into that camera and told everyone they're not going to pass on a great offensive player if one is available at their pick position. And would you do it if you're sitting at 12 and a guy like Jeremiah Love, the running back, is still on the board? Do you take him? Do you stay disciplined to the best player available philosophy, even if it means grabbing an offensive player when the popular opinion says you should go defense? Because I think Schottenheimer would, and I think that's exactly what he was hinting at. Now, there's one more nugget from the Pro Day circuit that I want to make sure you don't miss because it could have long-term implications for this franchise. Reports indicate that Schottenheimer made contact with David Mulugheta at the Texas Pro Day. And if you don't know who that is, he's one of the most powerful agents in the entire NFL, and he represents some of the biggest names in the league, including clients that the Cowboys are going to have to negotiate with. And the fact that Schottenheimer is proactively building a relationship with this guy is really smart because historically the Cowboys have had some friction when it comes to dealing with major agencies, and that tension has cost them in negotiations before. So if Schottenheimer can bridge that gap and create some real rapport, it could smooth over a lot of the anxiety that we as fans feel every time a big contract negotiation comes up. And here's a little bonus detail. Mulugheta also represents linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas, who's projected as an early second-round pick and could be a legitimate target for Dallas if they decide to trade back from that 20th pick. So there's layers to this connection. And I think it's something worth keeping an eye on as we get closer to draft night, which, by the way, is less than a month away now. So everything is accelerating, the visits are happening, the dinners are being scheduled, the evaluations are being finalized, and Schottenheimer made it clear they're not done adding pieces to this roster. They're still open for business. And that means between now and the draft, we could see another free agent signing or two to further solidify the roster before they start making their selections. And when you add all of this together, the draft, natural draft, pure philosophy, the offensive weapon, hunting the relationship building with agents, the secretive nature of their 30 visits. This Cowboys front office is operating with a level of intentionality that we haven't seen in a long time, and honestly, it gives me hope, because for years it felt like Dallas was just winging it on draft night, reaching for guys and trying to force square pegs into round holes, but this year it feels different. It feels like there's a real plan in place, and Schottenheimer is the one driving it. So, Cowboys Nation, I want to hear from you in the comments. What position do you think Dallas should target with their first pick? Do you want them to go defense and shore up that side of the ball? Or are you on board with grabbing an offensive weapon if the right player falls to them? And what do you think about Michael Trigg as a potential tight end target? Because personally, I think that could be one of the sneaky best moves they make in this entire draft. If they can land him in round 3, drop your thoughts below. Let's get this discussion going, and if you made it this far in the video and you're still not subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications because we are locked in on Cowboys coverage every single day. And I don't want you to miss a single update as we head into the most important month of the offseason. This draft is going to shape the future of the Dallas Cowboys, and we're going to be right here breaking down every single pick, every single move, and every single rumor until the very last selection is made. Let's ride, Cowboys Nation.